It's a long held belief at Driveway Devi that the way and manner in which artists or anybody involved in an artistic endeavor consumes and interprets the world is perhaps a lot more nuanced than quote unquote ordinary people who are engaged in different pursuits. And therefore, even if there is an artist of any kind who may not directly be practicing a therapeutic modality, it's always extremely interesting for us to pick that individual's brains because the perspectives and the lenses through which they interpret, analyze, and soak in the world and its goings on is almost always very different and very interesting and very insightful. Today, I'm being joined by prolific artist Swati, all the way from Dubai. And when we first got in touch, it was plain to see that apart from the beautiful creations that she makes, she also has, unsurprisingly, that same way of perceiving the world and has had a few very significant personal experiences that make her even more relevant to our kind of discourse, which we will subsequently find out. We are calling this session of talk therapy Current Canvas, brought to you by Driveway Devi. I'm Karthik on behalf of Driveway Devi, and I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Swati and thank her for making the time because I know she's been extremely busy. It's good to see a busy artist.
Thank you so much, Karthik, for this elaborate and, dare I say, a little um, unheard of an introduction for me because I introduce myself as an artist and educator, and that would be the end of it. But to hear such an extended version of an introduction for me, it feels like a milestone for me, to be honest. Okay,
Wow.
so
Okay, no
word
pressure.
now. I'm an artist. All right. Okay, now what else? But thank you so much. It is like you said, yes, the lenses of an artist is certainly a lot more vivid, a lot more nuanced than how um, people who are not either trained or born with it. Um, Again, creativity is something that everybody has, but um, the channel of becoming an artist is a skill. So, yes, and the fact that I have been an artist since the day I can remember, in the sense, not immediately identified myself as an artist because I was just simply painting and creating art, but then to finally realizing that this is going to be my life. This is going to be the passion that I will be following. And yes, that kind of changes the way one looks at things. So thank you.
Absolutely. But inadvertently, you brought up a very interesting point on which we can do an entire session separately, because
Uh-huh.
I used to struggle with that question a lot in the sense of when shall I consider myself having become a filmmaker, for example? Because
Uh-huh.
one has been engaged consciously or unconsciously in that pursuit in any case since time immemorial. And then at what point do you formally say, okay, fine, now this is who I am or what I am? Anyway, uh, as I understand, we are all multifaceted, multidimensional beings. But it's fair to say, I think, that the two very, very critical and important pillars of your own life are art and teaching. And we will get into both individually and separately because you, by sheer coincidence, mentioned that you've been painting since forever, but there was a specific and certain time, perhaps, when you realized that, okay, fine, this is it. It makes it the perfect segue to my first question, which is that when was that point? And more importantly, what made it clear to you that yes, this is it. I am an artist and this is what I hope to do for the rest of my life.
All right. Um, Let me begin with saying I was born with it. It's as simple as that. Uh, Art is not just a creative outlet for me. Art is has been my true calling since I can remember picking up a pen. All right. And it's something that I did not question as to, is art going to be the pursuit? Is art going to become a profession? Because since childhood, it has been something that I have been very active with.
Mhm.
And thankfully, my family identified it, I believe, and they did give me the freedom and the independence to pursue that. And I have graduated from Institute of Applied Art, which is one of the top colleges in India for arts. And a small story I would like to add over here is that JJ Institute was such a coveted institute that, of course, as all art loving children, or I was just a child at that point of time, I applied for it but couldn't get through. But I did get through in the last list of the open quota. And the beauty of that was I got into the university in the last list, but I got out as a ranker. So that journey kind of cemented my belief that, all right, creativity is definitely something I always had, but this fundamentals and foundation that this college has given me totally made me believe that this can be made into a profession. So it was always clear to me that this would be the profession that I would get into. And personally, too, when I create art, it definitely becomes an absolute focus, which is very difficult for me. I'm usually spread very thin with personal and professional commitments. But when the moment I start creating art, the focus is absolute. So it has always been like that. And thankfully, I think it goes personally, whatever that you like and whatever that you're good at, plus the support that you get from your surrounding, it's very, very important. I was always given the freeway to paint on doors, to paint on walls, to just have my way around the house. So that definitely honed my skills and confidence.
Thank you for sharing that. Two very quick points come to my mind, and both are actually compliments to you, or rather your situation. One is that the fact that you cannot identify a specific instance or a point in time that this happened just sort of demonstrates how innate it's always been. And number two, that wonderful story about JJ, because really what happened was a huge validation.
Mm. Definitely.
So
Certainly.
yeah, so that's really really wonderful as well. Um, I want to delve a little bit into a psychological facet of this, and by that I mean that um, did you, through your growing up years, perhaps when you were in junior, middle, or high schools, and of course, all the way till now, it may have been in different ways, and it may have been things that you were extremely aware of, or some things that perhaps you weren't very, very conscious of. What I'm trying to ask you is that in the process of creating art, um, when you were younger, did you feel and were you consciously aware that aside from perhaps, exploiting is such a negative word, capitalizing on your creative juices, was it also serving as some kind of escape, perhaps some kind of coping mechanism? We all go through certain situations in our lives, whether it's at school, whether it's at home, where things aren't always hunky dory or peachy. So, was it in any way an escape at some point? I'm just trying to get a sense of what you felt psychologically during the process of creation.
Right. If I'm going to be very honest, the psychological impact uh, is actually very similar to what it was as a child and to what it is today.
Okay.
It silences the world for me. It silences the noise around me. It gives me the focus that I didn't realize I had. I was always a very active child, and always into creative pursuits. It can be the art form, which is painting and drawing and sculptures and things like that. Also in performing arts, theater, dance, and all of that. So I was always very active. But when you are doing so many activities at the same point of time at that age where you're trying to absorb so much, where everything is so new, where everything is so exciting, or maybe not, the negatives and the positives, when you're trying to balance it out, art has been one very solid anchor through it all. It certainly was a periods that would really calm me down, really went it out. Um, and honestly, I would love to tell you a story about. So there used to be a lot of drawing competitions that I used to be part of, and in one of the competitions, I must be in my grade eighth or seventh or something like that, and they had asked us to portray a future of this planet.
Hmm.
All right, and I was the only child in the bunch of 25 kids who portrayed a beautiful, bright future of this planet with, robots playing with children, with domes, with trees, and, basically
Oh,
a
so do you
planet that
mean all of the others sort of depicted quite dystopian images?
you have, you would be shocked. Yes, it
Wow.
was all war, death, pollution. It was dark, negative, and mine was the only one that were first of all bright colors and bright message. So I think art has always had a very positive impact on me, and also because um, the kind of thought processes I had were not exactly, when it used to come to art, it would all be positive. It would all be sunshine. And that would show in my art. It would all be upward. So, and that's the same thing even today. Even today, my art is more uplifting. There are not exactly like super bright colors, but if it's needed, that would be there. But it's never dull or dark. That is not the style that I ever go to. So, yes, art has silenced the noise for me all the time.
That's beautiful because that is precisely its intended therapeutic effect as well, which is what an increasing number of very effective art therapists are doing. In a nutshell, of course. Let's move then to teaching for a bit, and then we'll bounce back. There
Mhm.
are, of course, various reasons why people get into teaching. It's a bit of a cliche, but most cliches are rooted in truth. I'm not saying it applies to you, but when it comes to people who are seriously pursuing any art form, whether it be writing, literature, etc., because it is professionally inhabiting such an immensely risky realm, and the brutal fact and ground reality is that there are any number of absolutely brilliant artists of all kinds who are just languishing in complete anonymity and penury. It is advised that people engaged in the arts get sort of a stable day job, which invariably ends up being teaching. You have any number of examples, particularly abroad, I think, where, typically your professors at colleges, etc., will be also, apart outside of their teaching time, be involved in their own artistic practices, so on and so forth. Now, I know that you're a very, very passionate teacher. When did you get into it and why?
All right. It started on auto mode. It was not exactly that I went looking for it. In my master's, my professor, he moved university and he became the dean of the interior design and architecture department. And he remembered my final year portfolio from my master's. And at that point of time, I was already working at an interior design firm as their marketeer. And he mentioned that he remembers my hand done portfolio. So I had done a lot of drawings that were hand done, and
Mm,
that was, well, in his words, unforgettable.
mm.
So he called
And
me
just
in.
to clarify for for lay people such as myself, that also probably stood out because many others were doing this same kind of work using computers.
Digital. Yes,
Right.
so it was all digital.
Yeah.
So he called me in and he said, "This is what it's going to be. I would love for you to come on board and teach these particular subjects." And that I was very, very good and I knew it too. I wouldn't take it up if wasn't confident enough
Sure.
because I wouldn't be doing justice. So that was pretty automated. It was given to me by my mentor. And then what happened was my company disagreed to give me that one day for university, which I did mention I would compensate on other days on
Hmm.
the weekend.
Hmm.
Uh, I resigned from that job because I do not know what switched in me, but something told me that this would be a profession which would not feel like a profession, but more like me giving back with all these years of learning. And I resigned from my job. I joined the university after a couple of years, and I again joined another full-time marketing job. So I was doing both of it. And the beauty about teaching was it was consistent. I've been teaching for 9 years now, and it has been consistent through the corporate up and down that kept happening simultaneously. Now, uh, maybe it was just good timing, or maybe the good work, or something that the management saw in me in university, that I started with interior design department. Architecture got added on. A few years back, animation got added on. And last semester, I taught hospitality students also for
Wow.
interior management.
Hmm. So,
So
what have you been inadvertently causing a domino effect at your institute with having other teachers fired?
no, no, no,
I'm
nothing of
only
that sort.
joking.
I, I think being a visiting faculty
Yeah.
played for me rather than
Hmm.
against me,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
now I could, work in different
Yeah.
departments at the same time. And one thing I realized is that through all the departments, design is such a common factor. You know, fine, I understand ID, architecture, animation are all from the arts background, but hospitality was quite a surprise for me.
Hmm.
But that also has interior design management in it. So it's fantastic. And teaching is just such um, a, I don't know, a profoundly uh, beautiful profession, which no matter how much you give, you you end up getting more, you know.
So,
Um,
it's interesting you mentioned that because that would have been my next natural question had you not said that. Because again, just like people have various reasons to get into teaching, people draw different outcomes from it also. What is it? Is it the fact that you're able to share a certain knowledge? Is it the interaction with learners and co-artists? Is it being conversant and getting further opportunities to advance your own artistic mind, or all of the above? What is it?
um, Well, it's almost all of the above. So it started with me teaching when I was already involved with the interior design industry in this part of the world. So I could get the industry knowledge in my
Hmm.
teaching, and
Hmm.
that certainly definitely added a good edge to
Yes.
my teaching methodology. And it helped by bringing in the actual brands, bringing in the actual names, the technologies, the processes, and of course, my colleagues in the industry would come in and help in, guest lectures and things like that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that certainly definitely helped this kind of uh, mix between both corporate and
Absolutely.
teaching.
And of that, there is a huge gap, and that gap is being attempted to be filled across the world by various organizations.
Absolutely. And I have seen students, because in the 9 years, of course, now I'm still in touch with the alumni, and I do hear a very common comment as to the shock that they got when they actually went into the field. They thought they were brilliant A-grade students in university, and industry is going to have them with open arms,
Correct, correct.
but such a shocker.
Hmm.
And that is something which I personally had felt when I had uprooted myself from India and brought myself over here. It was not just the professional shocker that I got, that, oh, wow, okay, so this is how things work, this is how it's supposed to be structured. Even personally, you have to make certain changes, but your personal grooming, your personal ways to talk and communicate, and so many things that university might not really give too much onus to. And that is what my teaching entails. And maybe that is exactly why I have been involved with the university for the 9 years with additional scope of
Goals.
work. And
Hmm.
it's because I don't stick to the course only. I tend to bring in the new news that is going on. Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about industry
Correct,
updates.
correct.
Let's talk about all of this. And
Yeah.
I think that helps students more than they realize. Sometimes they feel
Absolutely. Oh, it's
but
absolutely invaluable. In fact, I must tell you to that end that my only basis, or well, not only basis, but one of the focal points of my decision of choosing what film school I would go to was the fact that, as opposed to academicians teaching, that particular school had people who were working in films on a daily basis. And because that is, and I'm not sort of trying to say that one perspective is more important than the other, but there has to be sectoral and industry relevance, and one has to be in touch with reality. Otherwise, you experience that shock that you very rightly spoke about.
absolutely.
Um, let's come then to again something you brought up yourself, and I would have come to. Mm, and I don't think you're part of a minority. You made a confession to me when we spoke offline. I just like sensationalizing things. It's nothing scandalous. But this whole thing about leading a reasonably protected, cocooned existence and life is something that I had told you even then. A lot of Indians in our sort of setups do experience, because our parents tend to go out of their way to ensure that we are never wanting for anything, and more than that, we are never required to do anything. It's as simple as that. Of course, their
Sounds
motivation
so
is
nice. It
is
sounds
is
so
purely
rosy.
love, but that can really, really sort of lead to problems later. And with that sort of context, uh, I would love to understand uh, why you moved in the first place. And it was a huge and tectonic and paradigm shift for you to move from Bombay to Dubai, from move countries, pretty much go it alone, and really sort of start to construct for yourself this absolutely new life, which you really had no idea how to do.
Well, moving here happened very organically. I did my graduation from JJ, and after that, I was working with a celebrity interior stylist who would design for the sets and the photo shoot props and sets and so on. So was working, and then I realized I've been born and brought up in Bombay, and I wanted to see a little bit more outside. And while working, and that was only for a few months, while working, I realized there were questions, there were situations and scenarios where I couldn't hold my ground. And something told me that I need to remove myself from this beautiful cocoon that my parents have so beautifully created for me, the secure surrounding, and push myself out. And that was the only thought. There were no deep ingrained trauma, nothing. I just realized that there's something that's missing. I have the knowledge, but it has to be converted into wisdom that would
I
make me
want to
hold my
quickly
ground.
interrupt you here. I'm sorry, but without getting into any details you don't wish to share, just if you can contextualize that, it'll help us understand better what you mean when you say there were situations that you found yourself not being able to navigate. For example,
For example, at workplace, if I knew a certain setup, because it was again interior stylist, I knew that a certain setup is not okay, and a little bit of tweak would have done the
right.
magic.
Huh.
I couldn't put it across. I
Okay.
couldn't tell why. Although I have been trained in JJ about design principles and fundamentals and all of that, and I knew it, but just
No,
to
but
say
surely that wasn't because of a lack of intellectual ability, but more perhaps
people
confidence.
skills.
Yeah,
I think it was people skills. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
just because I was working with such,
Big names.
star
Hmm,
parts, yes, in their own fields,
hmm, hmm.
that uh, to get the timing right, nobody tells you. You might have all the good theory, but if you don't time it right, the point won't land. Now, these are people skills and those small soft skills that nobody teaches you. So I think that was something I never had to think about because, again, I used to, well, as children, we largely live in with our parents for the longest time. And you, if everything is given to you on the platter, you never ask for it. So you don't know how to ask for it when you're working, you know? So somewhere that it was a challenge that I faced. And I do see youngsters from India and honestly living over here in different diaspora also face these challenges because sometimes the parents caring becomes a little coddling, and in the garb of protection the independence is curbed.
Hmm.
So a lot of times parenthood is tricky. I'm not a parent, but I've been teaching for 9 years, so I think I can
You
very
have some
legitimately,
sense, of course.
yes, I can say and comment on it that sometimes you have to let them be. You have to let them make those choices
And those
without
mistakes, very importantly.
without assuming that it'll be a mistake.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
might be, but
Yeah.
let them.
But also, I think in India and South Asia, especially, there is this culture where mistakes are frowned upon. They're not allowed, which itself is, a bit worrisome to me, at least as a parent, because my wife and I always tell our daughter whenever she makes a mistake, she's immediately panicked and says sorry. And we say there's absolutely nothing to be sorry about or for.
Absolutely. Mistakes give you the greatest learnings and the learnings that you will never forget. So I think that is something that if parents could largely understand and be fearless about, that even if there's a mistake, they'll be there to support, they'll be there to maneuver and make it right or let the child learn out of it. I think that is something that the coddling bit could have still does make a large difference in children and youngsters that I see. It certainly made certain impact in my life too, coming from a extremely beautiful, loving, privileged background, but it had the other side too.
Sure.
Uh, Confidence was not the problem. It was more of trying to put my point across in an environment that I was not very, I was unknown about. I was oblivious about the professional world. So I just feel that the familial ethos should always take this into consideration, giving your child the space to talk, to share their opinion, and not to be belittled about, and given respect no matter what the age. So that
Absolutely.
would
Absolutely. So we digressed, albeit in a very important tangent. So you were at this place, and then you were going to tell us about how Dubai happened.
how Dubai happened, yes. So then when I realized that I just need to pull myself out and place myself in a completely different environment, Dubai was not exactly my first choice, but it was the only choice that my parents would send me to because the proximity, the geographical proximity, and
I
I
think
had
even psychologically, and there's a short flight and all those things.
exactly, exactly. Yes, for that only, for the security purposes. The cocoon couldn't extend further than UAE. So that is how I came over here.
Hmm.
And the
What would have
journey,
been your first choice?
it was actually UK.
mm,
I wanted to go to Central St. Martin's. That would have had been my first choice, but no regrets because honestly, what I've made of life over here, it's very, very rewarding, and life has been blessed. So,
mm,
after doing my master's in interior design, I started working interning during the master's itself. I
mm, mm.
interned in a publishing house, and after that, it was basically just plain working in interior design firms as their marketeer because JJ Institute gave me the advertising and marketing fundamentals, and Masters in Interior Design gave me the fundamentals of interior
Right,
design.
right.
And I
It
merged
was a
both of them.
marriage of, yeah.
Yes, so that is how it came to be. Um, my journey in Dubai. An artist that never left. I continued to paint on the side. I continued to draw on the side. Um, it was always again drowning the noise because even if it was I was alone and the solitude was beautiful, but still the loneliness sometimes would be very, very noisy. And that art definitely helped me focus and channel the energies that could have been would have worked against me, but
Mm,
art really grounded me and put me on the right path and kept me on the right
mm,
path.
mm, mm.
Not,
Absolutely.
but yeah.
Finally, as we wrap, and I have overstayed my welcome, I must ask you to sort of outline not many, but two, three most significant ways in which you felt displaced, misplaced when you initially moved to Dubai, and arising from those experiences, what are some things that other people can sort of keep in mind while preparing towards a more independent stroke new existence?
Number one will be how to deal with owning up your life in entirety. And by owning up, I mean being your own cheerleader, being your own admin, being your own financial planner, being your own driver, being your own everything. Be ready for it. It's different for different people. I'm just
Sure,
talking about
of
people who
course.
would come on their like and live on their own. Be ready to be there for yourself in entirety. Yes, today with the technology, you can video call your parents, your friends, etc. All of that is there, but in the end, the little things like waking up and not having a cup of coffee ready for you, it's just those little things.
No, they're big
You
things. They're big
Yes,
things
it
that we
is
find
small.
little and we take for granted.
Exactly. Your day doesn't start when you don't have that good cup of, caffeine. But so be ready to own up your life. Be ready to support your dreams. Be ready. And by support, I don't mean just mentally and emotionally, financially also. If there is one thing, one attribute that I would have liked to be a little different in my life, would be the knowledge about financial management. That would have been something that would have helped me so much and would have snowballed into something larger and much more prosperous for me today.
Right,
But I had to learn it and start a little late, but it happened. So that's
right.
one thing that I would want anybody to focus on, because that is also one thing that we don't talk about in our families: financial planning. Elders believe that they are doing it, they're doing
Yeah,
it for us,
correct, correct.
but it's kind of backfiring. Tell us how to do it. We'll
Right,
do it. We might make mistakes, but those mistakes might be very small because
right.
learning when you're already started to work becomes a little late.
Also, I
But
think it's at some point it's also a very personal thing how an individual wants to financially plan, and the specific elements of that plan are very very subjective choices.
very subjective, Karthik, but you need to know about them
Ah,
to
ah,
make those choices. And who better than people you trust blindly and who trust you blindly? Who better? It's your family and your close people. So if you don't speak about it, you won't know. And it should start early on. Not only because, well, I chose to do chartered accountancy, not only because of that. It should be a general topic through any and every strata of society or any age. it should be a
Well,
common
it is
topic.
happening now. In fact, my wife recently wrote textbooks starting from as low as grade one in a new subject called financial literacy.
Okay.
And so, bit by bit, it's certain fundamental financial literacy, and then evolving with each grade is going to be taught.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I must add on to this as a little bit of a conclusion to my journey as a student and then working as a corporate, as a marketer, and now as a full-time licensed artist in the UAE, that having a good financial backing is always important in any field of life. The fact that I hung up my boots in the corporate world last September, took a sabbatical for a couple of months, and finally really started working as a full-time artist only from February. All of this was possible only because of the corpus that was made
So,
in the last 9 years, or else how am I supposed to invest in a completely new field professionally if I cannot sustain myself?
that's true.
So I think that's a flow. It took me, I think it's been 14 years now. I'll be completing 15 years in the UAE.
Wow.
Beautiful 15 years, very rewarding, very successful, but it has to be planned. It has to be planned. Art is such a immersive, emotional, soulful process, but you can never negate the business side of it.
Yeah, yeah.
One should never do that, or else it's not going to be sustainable, unless, of course, you have external resources.
Absolutely, quite right. And in fact, I will use this opportunity at the cost of, I don't know, maybe triggering you, but I can't help but underscore this from particularly a gendered lens, where, when on the one hand, we are constantly talking about women empowerment and freedom and liberty, and in our kind of familial and social constructs, it's so important for all the points that you've mentioned, particularly for women to be making themselves conversant with them, because at the end of the day, men सीख ही जाते हैं और उनको सिखाया भी जाता है. I mean, these same families with the boy
Correct.
child, they will, include and sort of, as time goes on, evolve them with a certain amount of knowledge and access to their plans, etc. But the women are completely kept out
Out
of
of the
that
context.
loop because they don't perceive it as any of their business, not for any bitter reason, but just so that, oh, why bother? This is not for ladies. So it's even more important, particularly again in the Indian context, that this kind of education, awareness, exposure be done by women for themselves, because then, God forbid, if a lady finds herself in any kind of unsavory situation, whether it be, a marriage that's not working out, etc., you're just infinitely more empowered to take certain steps that a lot of them can never take for these reasons, specifically. So, yeah, it's been lovely chatting, just as I suspected it would be. You've been very, very honest and forthright, and we really appreciate that. We wish you all the very best. Keep creating the amazing art that you do, and kudos. I mean, it is a real privilege to be able to dedicate oneself entirely to one's art without doing anything else. And you've clearly worked systematically and very, very hard in order to reach that point. So, many congratulations on that. And thank you for this interaction.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karthik. It was a pleasure. And I must add that y- you're a wonderful host with whom this is the first time that I am really talking about my journey. I've never done that before because I believe my work will talk about itself. And there's nothing more that anybody else has to know. But I have realized, and I've been reading a lot and I've read about it a lot, that talking about oneself as an artist will only help people understand the art better. And I think you make it so easy for me or anyone else. I've heard your other talks too. You make it so easy for us to talk that it doesn't feel intrusive. It doesn't feel, rather, it feels very engaging. And sometimes just talking about things about my own life, I was like, oh, yeah, actually, life has been okay. I think I have dealt life well. So
No,
thank you.
that's a huge compliment, and the best kind, that somebody who's trying to increase a certain kind of meaningful discourse. There can be no better compliment. So I really appreciate that. That's like the best kind of feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karthik. I wish you the very best ahead.